Everybody, welcome to The Rock. Just kidding. Welcome to another episode of Rewind to Tape. I'm none other than your friendly neighborhood soda, joined as always by my co-pilot here, Ben. How you doing?
Good, and I just saw your name, and I love that.
Yeah. So before we get into it, the movie we're doing is The Rock, and actually one of the more popular fan theories, which I'm actually discussing a little bit. I actually have a list of 10 reasons why John Mason could be James Bond. But basically, there is a theory out there that the character played by Sean Connery is the same James Bond we saw in the Connery films. That is only if you take out Never Say Never Again, because while it is non-canon, if you include that, it screws up the whole timeline. You take that out, everything matches perfectly.
How do you see it? Do you believe in it?
No, I don't really care either way. I just think it's fun. It's just one of
It
those
is fun.
things. If he is, cool. If he's not, I don't care.
It's kind of like Pixar theory, where every movie might be connected.
Yeah, exactly. It's just fun speculation. That's all it is.
Oh, E.T. and the Star Wars are in the same universe, but that is actually canon. Yeah, E.T. is in the Phantom Menace.
True, and just like Star Wars exists in Raiders of the Lost Ark universe, maybe because there are hieroglyphics in the Well of Souls.
Yeah,
Ark of the Covenant. If you can find pictures zoomed in, and this has been confirmed by the set designers, they included a hieroglyph with C-3PO and R2-D2 on it. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure we talked about it when we did Raiders.
My memory's going. I'm turning on. I'm sorry, man.
Raiders. Yeah, no, you didn't know that was.
I believe you.
Oh no, we have an audience watching, so I'll just quickly share the picture. Yeah, right there.
Oh no shit. Yeah. I'll be a monkey's uncle.
From Steven Spielberg to his good friend George Lucas.
Well, don't forget, Lucas and Kevin Fisher both in Hook.
Yep, that is true. That is
so
true.
it's been close.
Mm-hmm. So yes, the movie we are here to discuss is The Rock, the 1996 Michael Bay film, which is the second theatrically released film behind Bad Boys #1, and in my opinion, one of the better Michael Bay movies.
It might be the best. I haven't seen either Bad Boys, but I can't imagine it being. Well, he only did the first?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't imagine him doing any better with that than he did with that.
So this movie is that, but with more explosives. And that makes sense.
Can I just say?
It went on in his career, the fireworks budget kept getting bigger.
Can I just say that car chase scene is probably my favorite Michael Bay thing I have ever seen.
Really?
It was so well done, man.
I'm not gonna lie. Probably my favorite Michael Bay thing is the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Never seen that movie.
So I know a lot of people give it slack. I personally do enjoy it. It's just a little wrong in my book. But the Pearl Harbor attack is phenomenal to watch.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't that his answer to Titanic, more or less?
Or I don't know if it was his answer to Titanic, but it was definitely an answer to Titanic. And it definitely has its moments. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's not the best film, but I personally do have fun with it myself.
I never seen it, so I don't have a leg to stand on.
It's a movie. If you're ever like sick in bed or whatever, I would recommend watching.
Fair enough.
So yes, The Rock. You ready to get into it?
Hit it.
So I have an actual. There's a plot summary in IMDb that I think actually will suit this. It might have some humor in it. All right. On a rainy morning at Arlington National Cemetery, Brigadier General Francis Hummel, played by the great Ed Harris, PDL's favorite actor.
You mean PLD?
Yes, sorry, I might be dyslexic. Visits the grave of his wife, Barbara, who had recently passed away from an illness. He tells her that he misses her, but there's something he has to do now, and most of the world isn't going to like it. He hopes that wherever she is, she understands why he had to take the action he plans to. After saying a final goodbye, he places his Medal of Honor on the headstone and kisses it before he leaves. Later that night, Hummel leads a group of rogue force recon Marines on a raid of a naval weapons depot. They seize a stockpile of rockets armed with weapons grade O-ethyl methaphosphoneph, some really bad acid, commonly known as VX gas. They lose one of their men in the process. This was nasty to watch. A horrific death caused by an accidental release of the chemical when one of the canisters was dropped and the sphere containing the deadly substance shatters. The man's skin begins to dissolve. He convulses and chokes to death. Hummel and his second in command, Major Tom Baxter, have no choice but to leave the room sealed with their man inside.
Was Tom Baxter the one played by John C. McGinley?
No, Baxter is his right hand man that confronts him about late spoilers later for later in the film.
And David Morse. Okay, all right.
Where have I seen him from?
He's in a lot of stuff, man. Have you ever seen Contact?
When it came out. Because I went to his IMDb last night, and I'm like, I know I've seen him somewhere. None of the things were popping up.
He's one of those character actors where he's like in everything, and you're like, oh, I know him. Kind of like Brendan Gleeson.
Okay.
He's like one of those faces, man.
Okay, that makes sense. In an David Morse, was he ever in who? I don't know.
He's American, so I doubt it.
You'd be surprised how many Yanks have been in Doctor Who, man. In an FBI lab in Washington, D.C., and here's the thing. I don't remember them mentioning that this was Washington. I thought this was in California. Like, I know the main part of the movie takes place in San Francisco, but I thought the early stuff with Nicolas Cage took place in California as well.
Yeah, me too.
Dr. Stanley Goodspeed is called in to inspect a package sent to Bosnian refugees. He and a trainee, Marv Isherwood, find a small doll inside that sprays them with sarin gas and contains a bomb made of C4 explosive that could destroy the lab and kill everyone in the building. As Stanley works frantically to disarm the bomb, he turns down a hypodermic needle loaded with a dose of atropine. Stanley disarms the bomb successfully. At home that night, he relaxes until his girlfriend Carla, who Vanessa Marcel from Beverly Hills 90210 makes.
I was about to ask you, do you recognize the actress?
Totally. This is her first movie too.
By the way, okay, skipping ahead. Mason's daughter, is that who I thought it was?
Claire Forlani, yes.
Oh, I thought it was somebody else.
Who do you think it was?
Angelina Jolie.
No. So in the 90s, Claire Forlani was everywhere. She was in Meet Joe Black. She was in Mallrats. She was in a lot. She was an it girl of sorts in the 90s.
Gotcha. I know. Okay.
Yeah. He at home that night, he relaxes. He tells her about his experience and mentions that because the world is so cruel and violent, that anyone considering having children is being foolish. So she tells him she's pregnant.
Hold on, before you continue, I'm sorry. I wanted to bring this up earlier, but I love he bought the Beatles record for $1,600.
Okay, now think about this though. In context, yes, it might be a little crazy, but you got to understand a little thing about the Beatles. When they released their catalog in the 60s, there's two catalogs. There's the one that everybody knows, the one for the United Kingdom, which is all the albums you can get when they release them and everything. But there's also an American catalog because different distributors. So there's actually two sets of Beatles records. So the original UK, especially at that time, yes, were worth a lot of money. Now $1,600, I don't know, but they were worth a lot of money because this is back before the Beatles boomed again.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I just found it funny. I found it funny because we know that Kate can be this over-the-top, ridiculous person. I found it kind of funny to see him kind of like a regular desk man, kind of nervous about getting caught by his.
Nicolas Cage is playing a nerd in this movie, more or less.
And I told you via messaging, he kind of reminds me of Tom Cruise in Edge of Tomorrow.
In a way.
Anyway, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
I encourage it, and you know that. Okay, now where was I? She tells him she's pregnant, naturally, and Stanley, stunned, tells her he's happy. When she proposes to him, he accepts. Hummel is joined by other Marines who have served him over the course of his career. Major Tom Baxter, who he served with in Vietnam, Captain Hendricks, played by John C. McGinley, who he served with in the Gulf, and Captain Fry, which is the gentleman that you were mentioning to me yesterday that you thought looked like Will Forte.
Come on, don't use it here, right? I'm not in.
Definitely, they look like they could be related.
Yeah.
And the other actor, the other Marine, Darrow, who organized the raid on the weapons depot. Now, do you recognize Darrow?
Isn't that Tony Todd?
Yes, sir. None other than Candyman himself. They see
Rocket Man in this movie.
Touche. That was a good joke at the end of the movie, that's for sure. They seize Alcatraz Island and take 81 tourist hostages, placing them in the prison cells, then threatening the FBI and Pentagon with launching the VX rockets against the population of San Francisco unless the government pays ransom and reparations to the families of Marines who died on illegal clandestine Marine Force recon missions, or Black Ops, that were commanded by General Hummel. Now, this is interesting. He's doing everything. He's doing things for the right reasons.
Yeah.
He is definitely a sympathetic bad guy in this movie.
Yeah. He's like Magneto. He's doing that enough and you understand where he's coming from.
I would probably compare him a little bit more to Killmonger.
Okay, yeah.
You see where I'm coming from with that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough.
After Godspeed makes love to Carla, because naturally, he receives a
Godspeed.
He receives a call telling him to report to San Francisco. He assures her that it is probably just a training exercise and they can be married there when it is finished. When he arrives, he is greeted by Senior Agent Ernst Paxton, played by William Forsythe, and Bureau Director James Womack. They brief him on the situation, asking him to consult. Goodspeed agrees, but asks Paxton for a gun, having left his own sidearm at home. SEAL Commander Anderson, played by Michael Biehn, who turns out I was actually intimidated in this movie because some of the extras for these scenes were actual Marines, and he's been known to play Marines a lot on screen. So he was very intimidated, I read.
I like Michael Biehn. I like him.
Me too. I wish he didn't go away.
Did you ever see that? I think one year was a Nickelodeon movie called Clock Stumpers.
No.
Kristen Stewart was in it.
I know that movie, but I've never seen it.
Michael Biehn plays a villain. It's a fun teen movie. Pretty interesting.
Hands down, my favorite role of his is not Kyle Reese. It's Johnny Ringo in Tombstone.
Oh, of course.
I'm your Huckleberry.
He didn't say that. But, yeah.
Oh, but it said to him.
Yep. Love that movie.
Me too. SEAL Commander Anderson offers to lead an incursion team to the island to neutralize the warheads and free the hostages. In need of reliable first-hand knowledge of the physical layout of Alcatraz, Womack is forced to turn to longtime federal prisoner John Mason, the only former inmate to ever successfully escape. There is a considerable amount of bad blood between Mason and Womack, so Goodspeed is tasked with talking to him. Mason, which is funny because in this scene, or is it later in the movie, we find out Goodspeed is a derivative of Godspeed. Mason is willing to cooperate, however. Shortly after he signs his pardon, Womack tears it up. Goodspeed notes that while they are talking to Mason, he mentioned the names of several historical figures who were wrongfully imprisoned, like Nelson Mandela, Sir Walter Raleigh, Archimedes, and Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Russian. Womack brushes it off, accusing Goodspeed of asking too many questions. Now, so there is a popular theory out there that this character is none other than the original James Bond. Now, so these are the theories that this is an article from Screen Rant that I found. 9 things that prove John Mason is really James Bond. So number 1, John Mason does not exist. A common theory revolving around the Bond films is that each actor actually portrays a different character with the name James Bond. That means that it is plausible, even likely, that John Mason isn't his real name. In Connery's tenure as 007, he has used aliases more than once to protect himself and his fellow agents. So it's certainly in the realm of possibility that he changed his name upon being captured due to the events of The Rock. He escaped Alcatraz after the timeline of Dr. No. So there's that. He stole the microfilm after the last James Bond film he was in came out. James Bond could have escaped Alcatraz. Now, that's the weaker one there. MI6...
I believe that. I believe he could have.
I do, but I mean, like, compared to all of them... MI6 disavows agents. If you find out, John Mason, when he was captured, was disavowed by British intelligence. So there's that one. The way he carries himself. Often reckless in his approach because he knows he will come out on top, which he does time and time again. John Mason shares those cocksure mannerisms as he clearly knows he is smarter than the rest of the team storming Alcatraz. James Bond would have been out of action for decades, so the chance to show up younger men is something he would relish in. Also, British intelligence naturally, and John's daughter is another reason as well, which gives him a reason to escape. Hummel attempts to trick him into giving up his identity. Looking at the timelines, the antagonist of The Rock, and the Bond film You Only Live Twice, some interesting things become apparent. During the events of the 007 film, Hummel would have been serving in Vietnam. In the opening, 007 fakes his death, which then makes worldwide headlines. Hummel could have seen this headline and felt sympathy for the fallen naval commander, which is in keeping with his character. When the two meet face-to-face with The Rock, Hummel requests Mason give him his name and rank, even referring to him as Sailor. Mason gives a confused look and goes on to say he was in the army. This could mean Hummel recognized Mason as Bond from the headlines and tried to slip him up. Mason's confused look implies he realizes Hummel may know his true identity. Interesting, huh? Bullshit.
Yeah. Do you really think it's bullshit, man? Do you really think?
Come on. The thing is, this was never done on purpose, and the producers have debunked this.
Mm.
You know when they debunked it? Last year.
Why? Oh. Why?
Because they keep getting asked about it. People involved in movies like this do keep getting asked things like this.
And yet we still don't know what the three fucking seashells mean.
And that'll probably never be released, but I have heard a theory which I would never try. 2 for clamping, 1 for scooping.
All right, now continue.
Part of Mason's agreement includes a short stay at a luxury suite at San Francisco's Fairmount Hotel. He calls in a large amount of food to distract his minders. Out on the suite's balcony, Mason, while shaking on the deal he made with Womack, slips a rope around Womack. Dear Lord, it's a lot of tongue twisters there. Slips a rope around Womack's wrist and throws him over the side holding the rope. When Goodspeed calls the other agents to help him pull Womack to safety, Mason escapes. He steals a Humvee from the hotel patron and drives recklessly through San Francisco, colliding with cars and other obstacles to block their pursuit. He finally makes it to the Palace of Fine Arts and meets with his daughter, Jade. The two seem to reconcile, Jade being bitter after her mother's death and Mason's unintentional abandonment. Goodspeed shows...
Hold on a minute. I'm sorry to cut you off. You get over the whole contract.
I'm reading this. I didn't write this.
I know, man.
Take away the car chase. It is your favorite thing in the movie, so you take it away.
Well, Nicolas Cage, racist. I'm speechless. They basically do a car chase to Mason's daughter. It's not visually beautiful. I can't describe it by words. This driving is glorious. It's one of my favorite. I do think it was Nicolas Cage's audition for Guardians Second. Because didn't he have a yellow Ferrari in that too?
He's got a lot of cars in that movie.
I gotta see that movie, but yeah.
You haven't seen it?
No.
It's all right. It's not my favorite that he's done. It's fine. It's my opinion. Okay. Goodspeed shows up and tells Mason they have to rejoin the FBI team, but beforehand telling his daughter that he is working with the FBI, which is a pretty cool move.
That was really classy of him. really classy.
Which sets up the end part where Mason trusts him enough to reveal, spoilers, the location of the microfilm. Upon the return, Goodspeed learns that he himself will accompany Mason and the incursion team to Alcatraz, despite his minimal combat training and fear of deep water. Paxton appeases him by having his men get Carla to safety. With Mason's guidance, the SEAL incursion team successfully infiltrates Alcatraz mostly undetected, but as they work their way through the tunnels of Alcatraz and enter the shower room, their presence is discovered by sophisticated warning equipment set up by Hummel's men. Hummel attempts to take Anderson down, but Fry and Darrow grow impatient and open fire, leaving only Mason and Goodspeed alive. With Mason deciding to leave the island, Goodspeed must reveal the true purpose of the mission. Realizing his daughter's life is at risk, Mason agrees to stay and help. They begin the process of seeking out and disabling the 15 rockets one by one, traveling through the underground catacombs to avoid detection. They find them in the morgue, and Goodspeed begins the painstaking process of removing the guidance chip from each missile. With the VX spheres arranged in a delicate configuration, the work is slow and precise. While he removes the chips, he explains to Mason what the effects of VX are on the human body. After 12 rockets are sabotaged by them, Captain Hendricks is ordered to take a fire team down to the catacombs, resulting in a pitched battle in which Goodspeed uses lethal force for the first time.
Before I want to interrupt you again, I'm sorry. There was a great line spoken by Mason during this scene.
And the line is?
The says, King says, I wanted to try my best. And Connery's like, you bet. You're trying your best. We just go home and cook some home cream.
Yeah.
And Nicholas Cage's response, come a little plum cream. And the look on me, the look on Mason's face says it all. It's like,
touche.
Yeah.
After learning that Hendricks' squad has been killed, Hummel threatens to execute one of the hostages unless the guidance chip of the sabotage rockets are returned to him. Goodspeed grapples with the idea of surrendering the chips for a few moments until Mason destroys the chips, then surrenders to Hummel to buy time for Goodspeed to disable more rockets. During a tense confrontation in the prison courtyard, Mason insinuates that Hummel is actually insulting the memory of his fallen soldiers by threatening innocent civilians, and tests the general's resolve by calling him an idiot and denouncing his sense of patriotism as a virtue of the vicious, quoting Oscar Wilde. Hummel angrily strikes Mason and prepares to shoot him in the head, but instead orders him locked up. Goodspeed is able to disable the 13th rocket just before he is captured. Meanwhile, realizing that the SEAL team is lost, the Pentagon readies a backup plan. An attack by armed F-18s that will neutralize the poison gas by releasing thermite plasma bombs, which would also kill everyone on the island. Paxton confronts Womack, asserting that given the severity of the situation, he has earned the right to know why Mason was imprisoned and why Womack hates him so much. And we know why. Womack reveals that Mason was a captain of the British SAS who stole a microfilm containing serious secrets about the U.S. and other world leaders and events. The information came from the personal files of former FBI dirtbag J. Edgar Hoover. Those are my words, not the words on IMDb. J. Edgar Hoover is a piece of shit. Mason was captured at the Canadian border and refused. Seriously, look up J. Edgar Hoover. He's a piece of garbage.
No, I believe you.
Mason was captured at the Canadian border and refused to divulge the location of the microfilm. After being disavowed by the SAS, he was kept locked up without benefit of trial and told he would not be released until he gave up the microfilm. After Hoover died, the agency became a different beast, but it also became harder to come clean about the incident, so Mason remained locked away and forgotten. Mason is imparting the same information to Goodspeed as he fashions the bedding of his cell into a knotted rope with a wheel caster tied to the end for weight. He explains that the government had no intention of ever letting him go. Had he given up the microfilm, they would have simply killed him, making his death look like suicide. Goodspeed furiously asks how he managed to get out of the cell in the first place. An annoyed Mason ignores the question, simply throwing the rope until it finally hits a security switch that unlocks the cell doors. Once they have safely made it to the beach, Mason again decides to leave the island, convinced that Hummel is only bluffing. Goodspeed insists that the military will need more than Mason's assumption to call off the airstrike, and he will finish the mission alone if he has to. Goodspeed is captured before he can find another rocket, but he's rescued by Mason, who decided to come back. He did not want to see Stanley's child grow up without a father, as Jade has.
That was a great scene.
It was a great preceded by him snapping someone's neck.
Yeah. Gotta love that James Bond. Gotta love that James Bond.
British intelligence training.
Yeah.
The deadline gave the FBI Pentagon arrives, and when there is no ransom paid and more time requested, Major Baxter demands he take action. Hummel orders a rocket fired. It's headed for full stadium at Candlestick Park, but the former Candlestick Park. But Hummel slyly re-enters revised coordinates on his computer keyboard and redirects the rocket so that it falls into the ocean. The surviving officers are furious, as Washington will now believe they are weak and incompetent and hit them with everything they've got. Hummel tells them that the whole operation was a bluff that the government didn't fall for, and since he's a professional soldier, not a murderer, it's all over. He tells his men to take some hostages and leave. He will surrender and take the heat for it all. Fry and Darrow refuse. They consider themselves mercenaries working for pay, and they want their money or to make good on the threats. A Mexican standoff ensues, and Mason and Goodspeed... I wonder how they got that name. Mexican standoff ensues, and Mason and Goodspeed arrive just in time to witness its conclusion. As shots are fired, General Hummel... It's been a long month, folks. As shots are fired, General Hummel and Major Baxter are fatally wounded. As Mason opened fires on the mutineers, forcing them to disperse, a dying Hummel tells Goodspeed that the last rocket is in the lower lighthouse. Goodspeed heads to the lighthouse while Mason covers him from the rooftops. As Goodspeed disarms the last rocket, Darrow corners him, menacing him with a combat knife. Goodspeed launches the now unarmed rocket, which hits Darrow squarely in the chest, causing him to plummet to his death, and he is now what, Ben?
Rocket Man! Woo!
Up there alone. Wrong, sorry. As Goodspeed, dear Lord. And folks, I'm actually not high for once. As Goodspeed is handling the first string of green VX spheres, one of them drops on the deck. He catches it before he can shatter. Fry attacks him, chasing him through the lighthouse, and deciding to take a stand against Fry, Goodspeed lures him with the last guidance chip and attacks him. With the thermite plasma-armed jets approaching, Fry overpowers Goodspeed and tries to strangle him. Out of options, Goodspeed shoves the loose sphere into the captain's mouth and hits him in the jaw, crushing the vial and releasing the contents. Holy shit, that was a horrible way to go. Like, oh my God.
That is Nicolas Cage at his best, though.
100%, but dear Lord, just the vision of Fry having his insides, like his body melted from the inside, was not pretty. Yeah. Captain Fry dies almost instantly, violently convulsing as his flesh melts away. Goodspeed is also exposed to the toxin, and he immediately stumbles away, pulling the atropine antidote from his boot and injecting himself in the heart with it.
Great payoff from the beginning.
Right?
Great payoff.
I love it when everything ties together. Oh, it's just the dog. He is able to grab and light 2 green flares, the prearranged signal that the threat is over. The flares are spotted from land, but only after one of the jet pilots has released his bombs, exploding on the rear of the island, missing all the hostages, flying into the bay. Mason reappears and drags the unconscious Goodspeed ashore. Paxton calls on the radio and learns from Goodspeed that all the hostages are still alive, but that Mason had been killed. The distraction provides Mason time to escape before the FBI arrives, telling him that Womack tore up his pardon. Mason suggests that Goodspeed take his honeymoon with Carla by way of Fort Walton, Kansas, giving him a slip of paper saying front pew. When Paxton and Womack arrive, Goodspeed tells them that Mason was vaporized by the thermite plasma missile. The film ends with Goodspeed running from a church in Fort Walton, Kansas, as Carla urges him to hurry and get in the car as they get away. Goodspeed has in his hand a canister containing microfilm. He looks at the microfilm and asks Carla if she'd like to know who really shot JFK.
Dun, dun, dun.
Second movie. That's the first of two movies that he has dealt with that potentially has JFK information on it.
Well, don't forget, and this hit me last night in the first of two movies he went up against Ed Harris.
Harris. And you know what's funny? They're both the same. They both were in those same movies that we were just talking about, National Treasure 2 and The Rock. I was talking about, right? Because of
Paying 47, baby.
exactly. And Ed Harris, the villain.
Mm.
All right, so that is our thoughts on the. That is basically what we thought of the movie, and of course, I'll just read the synopsis because I'm lazy. So Ben, bring up the wheel.
Let me do this. You should have done this before, but I am lazy. Hear me.
Starting next week, we will definitely have more movies on the wheel because as you can see, we're down to the final 6 from this original list, and they are currently Face Off, Speed, Godzilla vs. Kong, Godzilla 98, The Mummy, and Twister. Ben, do the honors.
And I come in and face off.
Mommy.
Face off. Ah, mother.
Twister, man. Twister is such a good film. I'm actually looking forward to that. I actually watched this movie for the first time a couple months ago, and I'm kicking myself for not watching it 30 years earlier.
I watch it.
I love Twister. Twister is so much fun.
And
don't worry,
yeah.
we'll eventually get the Face Off. It's just
I know.
All right, Ben, where can everybody find you?
You guys can find me at my Twitter, Ben_radio, or on my YouTube channel, the Multiverse Kingdom. Monday. I'm on almost every day. Just find me there. And find me over here on the Northern Entertainment Group every Tuesday on Rewind Entertainment every Saturday morning on the Northern Countdown.
The boy's just running around the apartment today. And as for myself, you can find me on my personal Instagram at soda_the_saxman. You can find me here on the shows that Ben has mentioned. So Saturday mornings on the Northern Countdown, Thursday nights here on Rewind the Tape, and Wednesday nights over on the Squared Slice, as well as Saturday afternoons over on the Let's Get Ready Network on Blows of Wrestling. So on behalf of myself and Ben and everybody here at the Northern Entertainment Group, thank you very much for liking, subscribing. Don't forget to like the video and let us know what your thoughts are on The Rock. And we'll see you next week as we go down and we chase tornadoes with
and it's a twister.
See you next week, folks.